There are 3 dead humans in space right now, and one of them might stay perfectly preserved for the next 1,000 years. So, what actually happens to a body up there? It doesn't explode, it doesn't rot. And by the end of this video, you'll know the one thing astronauts quietly fear more than dying up there. It's not what you think, and it has nothing to do with pain. So, let's actually talk about this. Death in space sounds like science fiction, but it's been studied by very real and very serious people. NASA has flight surgeons, they have whole documents about this, and almost everything you think you know about it is wrong. Most of it comes from movies. The body doesn't explode, the eyes don't pop out, and the freezing thing is wrong too, at least at first. What really happens is stranger and slower and more haunting than any movie ever showed you. So stick with me, we're going to walk through it step by step. What kills you first, why a body in space refuses to rot, the only humans who ever died out there, and what NASA secretly plans to do with a body on the way to Mars. Let's start at the very beginning. The first 15 seconds. Let's say you somehow end up exposed to the vacuum of space with no suit. The movies have trained you to expect an explosion, a person swelling up and bursting apart. Forget that. It's nonsense. Your skin is tough, your circulatory system is a sealed, pressurized bag. It holds. What actually happens is quieter and weirder. In a vacuum, there's no pressure pressing in on you anymore, and one of the first things that happens is that the water in your body starts to turn into vapor. The saliva on your tongue, the moisture in your eyes, the fluid in your soft tissues, it all begins to fizz. Scientists even have a name for this. They call it ebullition. Your body would swell, it would puff up to about twice its normal size as those gas bubbles expand under your skin. It sounds horrifying. But here's the thing. Your skin holds it all in. You'd look like an inflated balloon person, but you would not burst. And we know this isn't just theory. Back in 1966, a NASA technician was testing a spacesuit in a vacuum chamber. The suit sprang a leak. He was exposed to near vacuum and stayed conscious for about 14 seconds before he blacked out. The crew slammed the chamber back to normal pressure in under 90 seconds. And he survived. The last thing he remembered was the moisture on his tongue starting to vaporize. The exact same effect we just described. He didn't feel pain, he just felt a strange fizzing. And then the lights went out. That's the real danger. It's not exploding, it's suffocating, and it's fast. The moment you're in vacuum, the oxygen in your lungs gets pulled out, and here's the cruel twist. Your blood flowing back from your body is now empty of oxygen too. So your brain gets nothing. You'd stay conscious for about 9 to 12 seconds. That's it. After that, you black out. And if no one pulls you back inside within a minute or two, you're gone. Not from cold, not from bursting, just from a complete and total lack of oxygen. Quiet. Almost peaceful. And then the body goes still. Which brings us to the real question. Now what? On Earth, a body starts to break down. In space, it doesn't. And the reason why is genuinely bizarre. Here's something we almost never think about. When a body decomposes on Earth, it's not really the body falling apart on its own. It's an ecosystem at work. Bacteria, fungi, insects. And most of that bacteria already lives inside you right now. It's in your gut. The second you die, it's no longer kept in check, and it begins breaking the body down. That's decomposition. It's just biology doing what it always does, recycling itself. But that process needs 3 things. It needs those microbes to be active, it usually needs oxygen, and it needs a livable temperature. Space takes away almost all of it. In the shadow of space away from the sun, it is brutally cold. It can drop to around minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit. At those temperatures, the bacteria in your body can't function. They essentially shut down. They don't really die. They just freeze in place. And without those microbes doing their work, the normal breakdown never even starts. But it's not only the cold doing this. There's a second force, and it's even stranger. Remember how the water in your body starts turning to vapor in a vacuum? That doesn't stop when you die. It keeps going. Slowly and molecule by molecule, the water leaves your body and escapes into space. This is called freeze drying. It's the exact same process used to make instant coffee, or those astronaut ice cream bricks from the gift shop. The moisture gets pulled out, and the rest is left behind dry and preserved. Over time, a body in the vacuum of space would lose all its water and turn into something like a mummy. Leathery, hollow, strangely intact. So think about what that means. A body left in deep space might not decay for a very, very long time. Centuries, maybe? It would just drift there frozen solid and freeze-dried, looking more or less the way it did the day it died. On Earth, we return to the soil in weeks. Out there, you could stay perfectly preserved long after everyone who ever knew your name is also gone. But there's one more force out there, and it works in the opposite direction. Radiation. Space is flooded with it, high-energy particles stream from the sun, and cosmic rays arrive from far beyond it. Here on Earth, our atmosphere and our magnetic field block almost all of that. Out in the open, there's nothing to stop it. Over years and then centuries, that radiation slowly works on the body at a molecular level. It damages tissue cell by cell, and it has nothing to do with bacteria or oxygen. So the real picture is stranger than just frozen forever. The cold preserves you, the vacuum dries you out, and the radiation very slowly unmakes you. It's a completely different process than the one we know on Earth. A body in space isn't truly eternal, it just decays in extreme slow motion, on a timescale so long it's almost impossible to picture. Now, has this ever actually happened? Have humans really died in space? Yes, and there's a reason it only ever happened once. Their story is one of the most sobering in the history of spaceflight. The year is 1971. The Soviet Union launches 3 cosmonauts. Their names were Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev. And they did something extraordinary. They became the first crew ever to live aboard a space station. They spent 23 days in orbit. They were heroes back home. The whole country was watching. And then it was time to come home. Their capsule separated and began the journey back. Everything looked normal. And then it all came down to a single small valve. As the capsule separated for re-entry, a breathing vent was jolted open by accident. It was a tiny thing, a valve about the size of a coin, but it opened while they were still high up in the vacuum of space, and the air inside their capsule began to rush out. The cosmonauts had seconds. The records suggest they understood what was happening and tried to find the leak, but it was hidden and hard to reach, and they were already starting to lose consciousness. Within a minute or two, all 3 were gone. It was the same ebulism and the same oxygen starvation we talked about earlier. Quiet, fast, and because they weren't wearing pressure suits, there was nothing to protect them. And here's the detail that stays with people. On-the-ground mission control had noticed something was wrong. The capsule had gone silent, no voices, no signals from the crew, but re-entry was already underway. It was automated, unstoppable. There was nothing anyone on Earth could do but wait for the capsule to land and hope. Then the recovery team rushed over and opened the hatch ready to celebrate 3 returning heroes. And they found all 3 men still in their seats, still strapped in. They looked for all the world like they were resting. But they were gone. All 3 of them. To this day, those 3 are the only humans confirmed to have died in space itself. That means above the line we call the edge of our atmosphere. And their deaths changed spaceflight forever. After the disaster, the Soviets made a hard new rule. From then on, cosmonauts had to wear pressure suits during launch and re-entry. They even rebuilt the spacecraft so that only 2 cosmonauts could fly at a time. The bulky new suits took up too much room. 3 men had died, and the vehicle itself was redesigned around making sure it never happened again. Their deaths literally wrote the safety guide that protects every astronaut who has flown since. Now we've talked about the cold side of space, but there's another side we haven't mentioned, the side facing the sun. And the difference is almost impossible to imagine. Here's an image most people never picture. A body tumbling slowly in sunlight would be heated on one side to well over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and frozen on the other side at minus 200, at the exact same moment, on the same body, over and over with every slow rotation. How is that even possible? Because space is almost empty. There's barely anything out there to be hot or cold. So an object in space doesn't get its temperature from the air around it, it gets it from light, which means everything depends on one thing: are you in sunlight or in shadow? The side facing the sun has no atmosphere to filter the light, so it could climb to well over 200 degrees. That's far hotter than anything we ever feel on Earth. And at the very same moment, the side facing away sits in pure shadow. It could be well below minus 200. So a body drifting in space would be heated and frozen over and over with every rotation. And if it stayed in constant sunlight, the freeze-drying would happen right alongside that intense heat. It would dry the body out completely over time. It's a strange thought. The same place can preserve you and dry you out. And it just depends which way you're facing. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. So far, we've talked about bodies drifting alone out in the open. The real problem is much closer to home. It's the one that actually keeps space agencies up at night. It's a body inside the ship. But none of that is what actually scares the people who go up there. Not the vacuum, not the cold. The thing that scares them happens inside the ship. Imagine you're 7 months into a 3-year mission to Mars. You are millions of miles from Earth. There is no turning around. There is no coming home early. And one of your crewmates dies. Now what? You can't bury them. You can't send them home. And you absolutely cannot just keep a body inside a small sealed spacecraft that you have to keep breathing in for the next 2 years. This isn't a horror movie. This is a real engineering problem that NASA has paid researchers to think about. And the solutions they came up with are genuinely surprising. So let's get into it. What do you actually do with a body on a mission to Mars? On the International Space Station, the plan is simple. It orbits close to Earth, so a dead crew member could be returned home on the next available capsule. Within weeks or even days, the body comes back. Problem contained. But a Mars mission is a completely different universe. You have no return trip for years. So researchers walked through the options, and most of them get ruled out fast. Option 1. Just release the body into space and let it drift. The problem is that floating debris near a spacecraft is dangerous. That body could drift along with you for the entire journey, or it could even drift back and collide with the ship. Releasing anything near your vessel is a serious hazard. So a burial in space is actually one of the worst options, even though it's the classic image. Option 2. Store the body somewhere cold on the ship. It's possible, but it takes up precious space and power, and it weighs on the crew in every sense. Every single day for years, you would know your friend is in the next compartment. And here's what makes this so much harder than an engineering puzzle. It's a human one. Who even makes the decision? On a mission that far out, the commander might have to choose what happens to a crewmate's body, and everyone aboard is grieving. In a space smaller than a studio apartment, with nowhere to step away, researchers who study this have to think about things that have nothing to do with physics. A crew could include people of different faiths, and they might have very different beliefs about what a body deserves after death. Some traditions call for burial, some require the body to be kept whole. And out there, you may not be able to honor any of them. NASA even studies how a death would hit the morale and the mental health of the survivors, because the people who have to keep the mission alive are grieving and confined, and they're millions of miles from anyone who could help them. The body is one problem. The living are a much bigger one. And that leads to a concept that sounds like science fiction, but it's genuinely been explored. It even has a name. It's sometimes called the body back. A company actually proposed it for NASA. Here's how it would work. The body is placed in a sealed, airtight bag and moved to an airlock. Then it's exposed to the cold vacuum of space just outside the ship. It's left out there for about an hour until it freezes completely solid. Then comes the strange part. Once it's frozen, the remains are reduced into a fine dry material through gentle vibration. The moisture is then evaporated away, and what's left is a small amount of lightweight sterile remains, compact, easy to store. This is based on a real idea called premation. It's a documented, eco-friendly burial method that's been studied here on Earth. And in space, that brutal cold does the work for free. It turns an impossible problem into something manageable. A body you couldn't store for years becomes a small pouch of remains, something the family could one day take home and lay to rest. It even sounds clinical. But think about the alternative they're trying to avoid. And that's where this whole story turns into something deeper than science. Because the hardest part of dying in space was never really about the body at all. Remember the loop I opened with? The one thing astronauts quietly fear more than the pain and more than dying itself? Here it is. And it's stranger than you'd guess. It isn't the moment of death, it's that out there the body never finishes dying. On Earth, a body changes. It returns to the soil, there's a slow natural goodbye built into it. In space, none of that happens. The body just stays, frozen and freeze-dried and perfectly preserved. Exactly as it was, possibly for centuries. A crewmate who never ages, who never decays. Sealed in the next compartment and looking the same on day 1 and day 1000. There's no closing of the chapter, no goodbye that ever quite lands. The absence of decay is the haunting part, not the death itself, and it goes even further than that. You would be dying somewhere so far from home that you cannot be brought back. Your crewmates have to keep living and working in a tiny space with the reality of your death right there beside them. And your family can't stand at a graveside. There may be no grave at all, just a small sealed pouch, or a body drifting in the endless dark, untouched, where no one will ever reach it. So maybe that's the real answer to the question we started with. What happens to a dead body in space? Physically, it freezes, and it dries, and it's preserved almost perfectly, maybe for centuries. But the harder truth is what doesn't happen. It never decays. It never returns. It never quite finishes the journey we all eventually take. It just waits there in the dark, exactly as it was. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember this. Everything up there follows rules stranger than we ever imagined. Even our own bodies. Especially our own bodies. And speaking of strange things space does to the human body, here's one that happens to astronauts who are very much alive. Every single one of them comes back from space slightly taller than when they left, up to 2 full inches. So what is actually stretching them? And why does it snap back the moment they're home? That's the next video. I'll see you there.